The metallic clang of industrial machinery echoed through the acid-stained streets of New Haven's manufacturing district, where neon signs flickered against the perpetual haze of chemical fog. In the year 2387, 50 years after first contact with alien civilizations, the promise of intergalactic cooperation had dissolved into something far more sinister. Corporate giants like Titan Corp had turned entire species into disposable labor, and on nights like this, Chen wondered if humanity had learned anything from its own dark history. The rain fell in sheets that night, not the clean water of Earth's ancient storms, but the toxic precipitation that had become normal on Kepler 442b. Each droplet carried trace amounts of industrial waste, turning the atmosphere into a slow-burning cocktail of progress and poison. David pulled his protective hood tighter as he guided his sanitation hover truck through the maze of towering factories and processing plants. 23 years old and already feeling twice that age, he'd been working the night shift for Titan Corp's waste management division for 3 years, long enough to see things that corporate PR would never acknowledge. Most nights passed in monotonous routine. Empty the industrial waste containers, process the recyclables, dispose of the hazardous materials according to Regulation Code 7 Alpha. The work was steady, if soul-crushing, and it paid enough to keep his small apartment in the lower district. David had learned not to ask questions about the stranger items that occasionally appeared in the waste streams. Fragments of alien technology, torn clothing with unfamiliar patterns, sometimes traces of biological matter that the scanners couldn't identify. Corporate policy was clear: process everything, report nothing, ask no questions. Tonight felt different from the moment David started his route. The usual chatter from his supervisor had been replaced by tense silence over the comm system. Security. Patrols seemed more frequent, their searchlights cutting through the industrial fog with unusual urgency. When David reached the high-security sector where Titan Corp conducted their most sensitive operations, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Fresh blast marks scorched the concrete near the main processing facility, and the acrid smell of discharged energy weapons lingered in the air. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. David's hands trembled slightly as he maneuvered his hover truck toward the massive waste container designated SC7, one of the high-capacity units reserved for the most classified disposal operations. The container's biohazard seals had been hastily applied, still glowing with the orange warning lights that indicated recent activation. Standard protocol demanded that he process the contents without inspection, but something about the evening's unusual activity made him pause. The silence felt wrong, heavy with the weight of secrets that demanded to be uncovered. As David activated the container's hydraulic lift, preparing to empty its contents into his truck's processing chamber, he heard something that stopped his heart. A soft melodic sound drifted from within the massive steel container, barely audible above the industrial noise. It wasn't mechanical, wasn't the usual groaning of compressed metal or the hiss of chemical reactions. It was organic, alive, and unmistakably the sound of distress. David's training screamed at him to continue with the standard procedure, to empty the container and process its contents without investigation. Corporate surveillance monitored every waste worker, and deviations from protocol resulted in immediate termination and potential legal action. But the sound came again, clearer this time, and David recognized it as something that transcended species barriers. It was the sound of a mother trying to comfort her child. Fighting every instinct for self-preservation, David climbed onto the container's access platform and peered into its depths. The harsh industrial lighting revealed a scene that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Huddled in the corner of the waste container, covered in chemical residue and debris, were two figures that were unmistakably alien. The larger figure cradled the smaller one protectively, her pale blue-tinted skin contrasting sharply with the industrial waste surrounding them. Her silver eyes met David's, and in that moment, he saw something that shattered every corporate lie he'd been told about alien inferiority. The adult alien, clearly female, was severely injured. Dark fluid seeped from wounds across her arms and torso, staining her torn clothing. But despite her obvious pain, she maintained a protective stance over the smaller figure, a child who couldn't have been more than 6 years old in human terms. The child's silver eyes were wide with terror, but she made no sound, having learned through brutal experience that silence meant survival. David's mind raced as he processed the horrific reality before him. These weren't waste materials or discarded equipment. They were living beings, someone's family, thrown away like garbage by the very corporation that employed him. The blast marks outside, the unusual security activity, the hasty biohazard seals, everything pointed to a cover-up of monumental proportions. Titan Corp hadn't just been exploiting alien labor, they'd been disposing of the evidence. The female alien attempted to communicate, her voice producing the soft harmonic tones characteristic of Zephyrian speech. David couldn't understand the words, but the meaning was unmistakable. She was begging for her child's life, offering herself as sacrifice if only her daughter could be spared. The depth of maternal love transcended every barrier of species, language, and circumstance. David looked around frantically, knowing that security patrols would complete their circuit within minutes. Every rational thought told him to walk away, to pretend he'd seen nothing, to preserve his own safety and employment. But as he stared into the silver eyes of the alien child, he saw something that made the choice inevitable. He saw the same spark of consciousness, the same capacity for fear and hope that existed in every human child. Without hesitation, David extended his hand toward the injured mother. The injured Zephyrian woman stared at David's outstretched hand with a mixture of hope and terror. Her silver eyes searched his face for signs of deception, having learned through painful experience that humans rarely offered kindness without demanding something in return. The chemical burns on her pale blue skin told a story of recent torture, while the protective way she shielded her daughter spoke of a mother's desperate love. David kept his hand steady, his voice soft as he spoke words that transcended language barriers. "I'm not going to hurt you," he whispered, knowing she couldn't understand his words, but hoping his tone would convey his intentions. "I'm here to help." The child, who had remained silent throughout the ordeal, suddenly lifted her head and looked directly at David. Her silver eyes seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly intelligence, and for a moment David felt something brush against his consciousness. It was gentle, questioning, like a tentative touch on his mind. The sensation startled him, but it wasn't unpleasant. Instead, it felt like the child was somehow reading his emotions, sensing his genuine desire to help. The mother noticed her daughter's reaction and tilted her head curiously. She spoke in soft harmonic tones to the child, who responded with similar musical sounds. Then, incredibly, the child reached out and touched David's hand. The moment their skin made contact, David felt a wave of overwhelming emotion wash over him. Fear, pain, love, and underneath it all, a desperate plea for survival. "She can sense your feelings," the mother said suddenly, her words heavily accented but unmistakably English. "Lucy knows you mean no harm." David's eyes widened in surprise. "You speak our language?" "I was engineer before," the woman replied, wincing as she shifted position. "Before they made me slave in their factories, I learned human speech to survive." She paused, studying David's face. "You are not like the others. Why do you help us?" "Because it's the right thing to do," David said simply, then immediately felt foolish for such a naive response. But the woman's expression softened, and she nodded slowly. "I am Emma," she said, her voice growing weaker. "This is my daughter Lucy. We were trying to escape when security found us. They said we were malfunctioning equipment to be discarded." The casual cruelty of the statement hit David like a physical blow. He'd heard rumors about Titan Corp's treatment of alien workers, but the reality was far worse than he'd imagined. These weren't just labor violations. They were crimes against sentient beings who had families, hopes, and dreams just like humans. "We need to get you out of here," David said, glancing nervously at his watch. The security patrol would return in less than 10 minutes, and if they found him here, all three of them would likely disappear into Titan Corp's disposal system. "Can you walk?" Emma struggled to stand, but her injuries were too severe. Dark blood continued to seep from wounds across her torso, and her breathing was labored. "I cannot," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But Lucy, please save my daughter." "I'm not leaving either of you," David said firmly. He looked around the waste container, his mind racing through possible solutions. The hover truck's cargo bay was equipped with environmental controls for handling hazardous materials, but it would be a tight fit for 3 people. More importantly, he needed to get them past the security checkpoints without triggering any alarms. David made a decision that would change his life forever. He activated his truck's emergency medical protocols, a system designed to handle industrial accidents involving biological contamination. The cargo bay's atmosphere shifted to a sterile environment, and emergency medical supplies deployed automatically. It wasn't a hospital, but it would have to do. "I'm going to lift you out," David told Emma, removing his protective jacket to wrap around her injured form. "This might hurt." Emma nodded weakly, then said something to Lucy in their native language. The child's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded bravely. David carefully lifted Emma first, her weight surprising him with how light she was. Zephyrians were apparently less dense than humans, their bodies adapted for a world with lower gravity. He gently placed her in the truck's cargo bay, then returned for Lucy. The child came willingly, her small hand gripping his tightly. As David held her, he felt that strange mental connection again, stronger this time. Images flashed through his mind, glimpses of a beautiful world with crystal spires and floating gardens, memories of happier times before the corporate ships arrived. Lucy was sharing her past with him, showing him what they had lost. "I see it," David whispered to her as he placed her beside her mother. "I see your home." Lucy's eyes widened with surprise, then she smiled for the first time since he'd found them. It was a radiant expression that transformed her entire face, and David felt his heart clench with protective instincts he'd never experienced before. As David sealed the cargo bay and began the process of bypassing security protocols, he knew there was no going back. He was committing career suicide, possibly literal suicide, but he couldn't live with himself if he abandoned these innocents to their fate. The corporation had already proven they considered alien lives worthless, and anyone who helped them would likely face the same disposal methods. The hover truck hummed to life as David programmed a route that would avoid the main security checkpoints. He had friends in the lower districts, people who operated outside corporate surveillance, but getting there would require careful navigation through the industrial maze. One wrong turn, one suspicious scan, and it would all be over. Emma's weak voice came through the intercom system. "David, why risk everything for strangers?" David considered the question as he guided the truck through the narrow alleys between processing plants. "Because someone has to," he finally answered. "Because if we don't stand up for what's right, who will?" The truck's sensors detected movement ahead, a security patrol changing shifts. David held his breath as they passed, but the guards barely glanced at what appeared to be a routine waste disposal run. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. They had no idea they were witnessing the beginning of a revolution. The abandoned subway tunnels beneath New Haven's industrial district stretched like forgotten arteries through the city's underbelly. David's hover truck descended through a concealed entrance hidden behind a facade of rusted maintenance panels. Its modified engines whisper quiet as they navigated the underground passage. The tunnel walls bore the scars of decades of neglect, but they also provided something invaluable in a world of corporate surveillance complete. Invisibility from Titan Corp's scanning networks. Tom Rodriguez waited in the shadows of his underground repair shop, his weathered face creased with concern as David's truck emerged from the service tunnel. At 57, Tom had seen enough corporate corruption to fill several lifetimes, and his mechanical expertise had made him invaluable to the growing underground network of people who operated outside official channels. His shop served as a sanctuary for those who couldn't afford corporate medical care, and his discretion was absolute. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Tom said as David climbed out of the truck's cab, his hands still shaking from the adrenaline of their escape. "What kind of trouble did you stumble into this time?" David's throat felt dry as he struggled to find words that could adequately explain what he'd discovered. "The kind that changes everything," he finally managed. "Tom, I need you to promise me something before I show you what's in the cargo bay. Promise me you won't turn them away." Tom's expression grew serious. In all the years he'd known David, he'd never seen the young man so shaken. "You know I don't ask questions about people who need help. What's got you so spooked?" Instead of answering, David activated the cargo bay's release mechanism. The medical atmosphere hissed as it equalized with the shop's air, and the protective barriers retracted to reveal Emma and Lucy huddled together in the sterile compartment. Tom's eyes widened as he took in their alien features, but to his credit, he didn't step back or reach for a weapon. "Sweet Mother of God," Tom whispered, his voice filled with awe rather than fear. "They're Zephyrians. I haven't seen any of their kind in the lower districts for months. Corporate security has been rounding them up for labor conscription." Emma struggled to sit up, her silver eyes fixed on Tom with wary assessment. Lucy pressed closer to her mother, her small hands glowing faintly with bioluminescent patterns that appeared when she was frightened. The child's empathic abilities were clearly active, sensing the emotional currents in the room. "They threw them in a waste container," David said, his voice tight with suppressed anger. "Like they were garbage to be incinerated. Emma's badly injured, and Lucy, she's just a child, Tom. They were going to kill a child." Tom's face hardened with a familiar anger. He'd lost his own daughter to corporate negligence years ago. A mining accident that could have been prevented if Titan Corp had invested in proper safety equipment. Since then, he'd dedicated his life to helping others that the corporations had abandoned. "Get them inside," he said, already moving toward his medical supplies. "I'll see what I can do for their injuries." The repair shop's interior was a maze of mechanical components and half-finished projects, but Tom had converted a section into a makeshift medical facility. He guided Emma to an examination table while David helped Lucy explore their new surroundings. The child's natural curiosity seemed to overcome her fear as she examined Tom's tools and equipment with fascination. "She's never seen human technology up close," Emma explained weakly as Tom began cleaning her wounds. "In the labor camps, we were forbidden from touching anything except assigned work materials. Lucy only knows factory machinery and punishment devices." Tom's jaw tightened as he worked. "These burns are from neural disruptors," he observed, his voice carefully controlled. "They've been using torture devices on you." Emma nodded, her silver eyes reflecting a pain that went beyond physical injury. "They wanted information about Zephyrian technology. Our people developed clean energy systems that could revolutionize this world, but we refused to share the knowledge with those who would use it for profit instead of healing." Lucy approached David cautiously, her small hand reaching out to touch his arm. When their skin made contact, David felt another wave of shared emotion, but this time it was different, Instead of fear and desperation, he sensed curiosity and gratitude. The child was trying to understand him, to comprehend why a human would risk everything to help strangers. "She's remarkable," David said softly, watching as Lucy's bioluminescent patterns shifted to calmer blues and greens. "I can feel what she's feeling. It's like she's sharing her thoughts with me." Zephyrian children are naturally empathic, Emma explained, wincing as Tom applied medical gel to her wounds. "Lucy's abilities are particularly strong. She can sense emotional truth in others, which is why she trusted you immediately. Your intentions are pure." Tom paused in his work, studying David with new understanding. "That's why you risked everything. She showed you who they really were, beyond the corporate propaganda about alien inferiority." David nodded, remembering the moment when Lucy had shared her memories of their homeworld. "They're not just intelligent, they're more evolved than we are in some ways. They've moved beyond the violence and greed that still plague humanity." Emma's expression grew sad. "Not all of us. Some of my people collaborated with the corporations, trading our knowledge for promises of safety. That's how they learned to build the neural disruptors and containment fields. Betrayal exists in every species." Lucy suddenly stiffened, her patterns flashing urgent red warnings. She ran to the shop's entrance, pressing her ear against the heavy metal door. Her empathic abilities had detected something that the adults had missed: emotional signatures approaching from the tunnels above. "Company's coming," Tom said grimly, recognizing the child's warning behavior. "How many?" Lucy held up 3 fingers, then pointed upward. Her patterns continued flashing danger signals as she communicated wordlessly with her mother through rapid harmonic tones. "Corporate security," Emma translated, struggling to stand despite her injuries. "They've traced the truck's energy signature. We need to run." Tom was already moving, gathering essential supplies and activating his shop's emergency protocols. Hidden panels slid open to reveal escape routes that connected to the deeper tunnel systems. "David, get them to the community center." "Maria. Santos runs the underground network from there. Tell her I sent you." "What about you?" David asked, helping Emma to her feet. "Someone needs to buy you time," Tom replied, his scarred hands steady as he prepared defensive measures. "I've been ready for this day for years. Get them to safety." Lucy grabbed David's hand, her touch flooding him with determination and trust. Despite her young age, she understood the gravity of their situation and the sacrifice Tom was making for them. Her patterns shifted to deep purple, the Zephyrian expression of profound gratitude. As they prepared to flee deeper into the underground network, David realized that their journey was far from over. They'd found temporary sanctuary, but the real fight was just beginning. Emma and Lucy weren't just refugees, they were living proof of corporate crimes that could bring down the entire system if their story reached the right people. The sound of approaching vehicles echoed through the tunnel system, and David knew their time had run out. Whatever happened next, there would be no going back to his old life. He'd chosen a side in a war he was only beginning to understand. The deeper tunnel system stretched endlessly beneath New Haven, a labyrinth of forgotten infrastructure that had once served as the city's primary transportation network. David guided Emma and Lucy through the maze of corroded passageways, their footsteps echoing off walls that hadn't seen maintenance in decades. The air grew thicker as they descended, heavy with the scent of rust and stagnant water, but it also carried something else: the faint aroma of cooking food and the distant murmur of human voices. Emma leaned heavily against David's shoulder, her strength failing with each step. The medical treatment Tom had provided was basic field care, enough to stop the bleeding, but insufficient to heal the deep trauma inflicted by corporate torture devices. Her silver eyes had lost some of their luminescence, and her breathing came in shallow gasps that worried David more than he wanted to admit. Lucy walked beside them with surprising resilience, her small hand maintaining contact with David's arm. Through their empathic connection, he could feel her drawing strength from his determination, while simultaneously sharing her own courage. The child's ability to sense emotional truth had become their early warning system, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to indicate safe passages and potential dangers ahead. The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that took David's breath away. What had once been a subway station had been transformed into something resembling a small city. Makeshift homes constructed from salvaged materials lined the platform walls while the center space buzzed with activity. Humans of all ages moved purposefully through the area, tending to various tasks that kept their hidden community functioning. "Welcome to Haven Station," said a voice from the shadows. A woman emerged from behind a support pillar, her dark hair streaked with premature gray, and her eyes holding the wisdom of someone who had seen too much suffering. "I'm Maria Santos. Tom sent word you were coming." David studied Maria's face, noting the scars that marked her as someone who had tangled with corporate enforcers and survived. Her presence radiated calm authority, the kind of leadership that emerged naturally in crisis situations. Around her, the underground community continued their work, but David noticed how many eyes turned toward them with curiosity rather than suspicion. "Tom stayed behind to delay the security teams," David explained, his voice heavy with worry for his friend. "Emma and Lucy need medical attention, and we need sanctuary until we can figure out what comes next." Maria's expression softened as she looked at Emma and Lucy, taking in their alien features without the typical human reaction of fear or disgust. "We've been expecting something like this for months," she said quietly. "Corporate security has been cracking down on alien workers, and the rumors about disposal operations have been getting worse." Lucy stepped forward, her empathic abilities clearly active as she studied Maria's emotional signature. Her patterns shifted to cautious yellow, indicating uncertainty but not danger. After a moment of silent assessment, the child nodded to her mother and extended her hand to Maria. "She's testing you," Emma explained weakly. "Lucy can sense deception and malicious intent. If she trusts you, then we can trust you." Maria knelt down to Lucy's level, allowing the child to make contact. The moment their hands touched, Maria's eyes widened with surprise. "She's incredibly powerful," she whispered. "I can feel her touching my thoughts, but it's gentle, respectful. She's not invasive." Through the empathic connection, Lucy was sharing carefully selected memories with Maria, images of their homeworld, glimpses of the torture chambers and Titan Corp's facilities, and the moment when David had risked everything to save them. Maria's face grew pale as she absorbed the evidence of corporate atrocities. "The community needs to see this," Maria said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "People have suspected what's happening in the corporate sectors, but Lucy's memories provide proof that could change everything." David helped Emma to a medical station where volunteer doctors began treating her injuries with supplies that were far superior to what most underground communities possessed. The level of organization and resources available at Haven Station suggested that the resistance network was more extensive than he had imagined. "How long have you been operating down here?" David asked Maria as they watched the medical team work. 15 years, Maria replied. "I started this place after my husband disappeared during a corporate labor dispute. The official story was that he had an accident at the processing plants, but workers who escaped told a different tale. He was asking too many questions about alien rights, organizing protests against the exploitation policies." As Maria spoke, David began to understand the scope of the underground network. Haven Station wasn't just a refugee camp, it was the nerve center of an organized resistance movement that had been quietly gathering strength for over a decade. The community included former corporate employees, alien escapees, and sympathetic humans who had grown disgusted with the system they once served. Lucy had found a group of human children who were playing with improvised toys in a corner of the station. Despite the language barrier, She was somehow communicating with them through gestures and her empathic abilities. The children's laughter filled the air, a sound that seemed almost miraculous in their underground refuge. "She's never had the chance to play with other children," Emma observed, watching her daughter with tears in her silver eyes. In the labor camps, families were separated. Lucy only knew work schedules and punishment protocols. David felt a surge of protective anger as he watched the child experience normal childhood activities for the first time. The casual cruelty of the corporate system became more personal when he saw its effects on an innocent child who deserved so much better than the life she'd been forced to endure. Maria approached them with a serious expression. "Our communications network is picking up increased security activity throughout the city. Tom's delaying tactics worked, but they're expanding the search pattern. It won't be long before they start checking the old transit tunnels. What are options?" David asked, though he suspected the answer wouldn't be encouraging. "We can hide you here for a while, but eventually they'll find us," Maria admitted. "The alternative is to go public with Lucy's testimony. Her empathic abilities could transmit the truth directly to human minds, bypassing corporate media control entirely." Emma struggled to sit up, her medical treatment having restored some of her strength. That would put Lucy in tremendous danger. If the corporations understand what she can do, they'll stop at nothing to capture her. "They're already trying to capture her," Maria pointed out. "The question is whether we use her abilities to fight back or continue running until there's nowhere left to hide." Lucy looked up from her play, her silver eyes reflecting an intelligence far beyond her apparent age. Through the empathic connection, David felt her awareness of the adult conversation and her understanding of the choice before them. Despite her youth, she knew that her abilities might be the key to saving not just herself and her mother, but countless others who suffered under corporate oppression. The weight of responsibility settled on David's shoulders as he realized that their escape from the waste container had been only the beginning. Now they faced a decision that could reshape the entire balance of power on Kepler 442b, and the stakes had never been higher. The decision came naturally when corporate security breached the outer tunnels. Lucy stepped forward, her silver eyes blazing with determination as she placed her small hands on the communication console that connected Haven Station to the city's networks. Her empathic abilities amplified through the technical systems, reaching every human mind within broadcast range. Across New Haven, people suddenly experienced flashes of memory that weren't their own. They felt the terror of being thrown into waste containers, the agony of neural disruptors, and the desperate love of a mother protecting her child. Lucy's truth cut through years of corporate propaganda in seconds, showing citizens exactly what had been done in their name. David watched in amazement as Lucy's patterns shifted to brilliant gold, her young face serene with purpose. Emma stood beside her daughter, tears streaming down her face as she realized what Lucy was accomplishing. The child wasn't just sharing her own experiences, she was broadcasting the collective trauma of every alien who had suffered under corporate oppression. Within hours, protests erupted throughout the city. Workers walked off their jobs, refusing to participate in a system built on cruelty. Corporate security found themselves vastly outnumbered by citizens demanding justice. The underground network emerged from the shadows, no longer needing to hide. Maria smiled as reports flooded in from across the planet. "It's working. Other colonies are picking up the transmission and sharing Lucy's testimony." David knelt beside Lucy as her empathic broadcast concluded, her small body exhausted but triumphant. "You did it," he whispered. "You showed them the truth." Emma wrapped her arms around both David and Lucy, her silver eyes bright with hope. "For the first time in years, we're not just survivors anymore," she said softly. "We're family." The corporate towers still loomed above the city, but their power had been broken by the courage of a child who refused to let injustice hide in darkness. Lucy's gift had given voice to the voiceless, and her trust in David had sparked a revolution that would reshape their world forever. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.